The short answer is yes, but actually no. The long answer is as follows. Chaos Dungeon is a dungeon crawling minigame introduced on DLC 2, where you explore a randomized room against randomized enemies to get randomized loot, hence the name. You can access it from Library Dream Basement after reaching Progression 1. There are two modes available, Chaos Dungeon and Time Space Dungeon. The former allows you to explore normally, while the latter turns the game into a roguelike, where all your gears, stats, and skills are reset the first time you enter and every time you die. Either way, you have to start from first floor if you die at any point. Chaos Dungeon has plethora of randomized loot ranging from items you can find normally while exploring to busted overpowered skills specific to Chaos Dungeon. But the loot is not the only thing that's random here. Every time you enter a floor or layer is what the game calls it, there's a lot of things being randomized. The game will roll a die to determine which room to choose out of 157. There are only 80 rooms in total, but a single room can have two different spawn points. The background music, weather, and lighting are also randomized. Every room has a door for entering the next layer, a lever to open the door, and a bunch of item and equipment chests. These are the only guarantees. But every room also has Almost Dead, a merchant whom you can buy items from. You should have not killed him for the Storm Ruler. A brown-haired fairy that gives you a fairy dust. A silver-haired fairy that gives you a fairy wings as well as souls. The souls you gain is based on your current level times 1000. So if you're at level 999, which you should be, you can get 1 million souls every time you find one. A flying book that gives you a random skill book. A squirrel that allows you to skip up to 3 layers. A bell ringer enemy that summons a nightmare spirit that will always respawn no matter how many times you defeat it, unless the bell ringer itself is defeated. A very rare mimic enemy that drops 3 or slabs. And up to 5 different random enemies that will die permanently but don't go invisible if you flee from them. All of the things I just mentioned exist in every room, except a few where enemies can't spawn. There's a catch, of course, they're all random. The fairies have 1 in 10 chance to spawn. The merchant, squirrel, and magic book all have a 1 in 6 chance. The bell ringer has a 1 in 9. The ravenous mimic is 1 in 100. And each of the 5 random enemies has a 1 in 2 chance to spawn. Last but not least, the door has a 1 in 5 chance to be a black door instead, leading you to a boss room. The bosses are also random, of course, because of course it is. In this room, you can talk to Mabel, which lets you heal, level up, upgrade weapons, and buy colored souls including black and tainted black souls, as well as the exclusive Soul of the Outer One, which is basically 10 tainted black souls and increases your sand instead. There's also a candle that lets you save. You cannot save in Chaos Dungeon otherwise, and you can also just skip the entire boss if you want to. Don't even bother fighting the boss, it's not worth your time. It only gives you 6 chests. But you can also learn the boss's lore by interacting with the candle after the boss has been defeated. There are a total of 9 different boss rooms. Every time you enter a layer, there's a chance that your depth increases. You start off on depth 0. If you're at least 10 layers deep, there's a 1 in 5 chance that your depth increases. There's a 20 layers increment for each depth increase requirement until you hit depth 9. Gaining depth is not possible on depth 9 until you defeat the Old King, which is always the boss when you enter the black door in depth 9, which I will talk about later in the video. Once the Old King fell, you can start increasing depth again starting at layer 200, and after depth 10, the chance for increasing depth is much smaller, followed by a decrease in chance all the way up to depth 19, the max depth. Depth affects a lot of things. The game doesn't use the difficulty you set, instead it uses depth as difficulty. Depth 0 is equal to difficulty 0 and depth 9 is equal to difficulty 9. It also affects enemy spawns and loots. The bell ringer only spawn on depth 3 or higher. The merchant will sell all the available items on depth 3 or higher. On depth 5, you can start obtaining DLC 3 consumables, and on depth 6 or higher, you can find Soul of the Outer One. The amount of items are also higher on the higher depths. For equipment, you can start finding +1 rings, which is stronger version of already existing rings on depth 3 or higher. There are +2 variants on depth 5 and the +3 on depth 6. Chaos Dungeon equipment starts appearing on depth 5, but the good ones won't appear until depth 6, and the really good ones are only available on depth 8 or higher. And finally, the real treasures of the dungeon, the overpowered Chaos Dungeon skills, are only available after depth 7, at a measly 1 in 55 chance each. Good luck finding the Chaos Blast. Their chances are much higher when you get to depth 10 though, at 2 in 63 chance instead, which is about 70% more common. So try to speedrun depth 10 as quickly as possible to prevent wasting too much time finding that single skill you need. There are 2 items that can only be used inside Chaos Dungeon: Old King's Bone Dust and Squirrel Fur. Old King's Bone Dust is obtained as soon as you enter and allows you to exit Chaos Dungeon. Squirrel Fur, on the other hand, is obtained from chests and teleport you to the next layer when used. This can be useful if you don't want to deal with the Nightmare Spirit, which still chases you even when invisible, or when you get the Pendulum area. Yeah, don't even bother with this one. You need to have really good eyes to find that one specific safe place to traverse it. Bonus point if you forgot to flip the lever before going to the other side. Alternatively, you can just use the bone dust to exit then re-enter. It will take you to the next layer. Okay, now let's get to the juicy part, the loot itself. Did I forget to mention that every chest has a 1 in 35 chance to be a mimic, and another 1 in 35 chance to be a big mimic? You can get most of the +3 rings in DLC 3, so you don't need to worry about not getting them. They provide really good stats, though there are better options for rings than them. The Chaos Dungeon equipments are not good. They're really underwhelming. I'm sure the only reason they exist is for Space-Time Dungeon. The only one notable are Mercury Shield, that protects you from crit and instant kill abilities. Basically, Resurrectionist Ring in the form of a shield that also provides 200% guard, and Miracle Maiden Scarf if you're playing magic build. There are 3 Chaos Dungeon weapons. Lost Sword, which strangely enough can be found as early as step 1. It makes your normal attack magical instead of physical. It has the skill Eclipse, Zenith Blade, and when maxed out, Solar Flare. Eclipse increases your defense and magic defense to 125% and doubles your guard for 9 turns. If you are yet to realize how overpowered guard is, check out my Covenant tier list video after you're done with this one. This one skill makes it worth it to go out of your way to get the weapon. The other skills, however, are not that useful. Zenith Blade is a single target physical attack that uses magic. It hits 4 times and does 5 times your magic, so 20 times magic in total. That's like below average for a weapon skill. But remember, this skill doesn't require you to max out the weapon, so I guess it's very powerful if you get it early in the game, since it's available as early as step 1. Magic is very lacking in single target attack anyway. The +5 skill, Solar Flare, is a certain hit attack that hits all enemies for 10 times your magic. That's literally just Meteor Shower. The next weapon is Glaakit. It makes your normal attack ignore defense and guard. It has the skill Lake God's Apocalypse. It sounds cool as shit. The skill itself doesn't reflect that. It's a certain hit attack that does 4 times your attack, then summons 2 thorns. What it means is using another skill as follow-up that attacks randomly twice with the same damage. So it's a skill that does 12 times attack. Not very good. The +5 skill, Green Decay is also not very good. A physical attack that does 6 times your attack to all enemies. It will then attack again at the end of the enemy's next turn. So once again, 12 times attack, not certain hit this time. Yeah, you can skip this weapon. The last one is Mary's Magical Wand, only available at depth 8 or higher. Holding the weapon prevents you from inflicting ailments and you cannot attack with the weapon. Instead, it turns your attack button into a skill that, it's literally just a certain hit dispel. Something you can achieve by simply using absolute precision. Not worth your time looking for this. Now, let's get into the real treasures of the dungeon. The reason why you will spend 3 hours exploring it. The skill books. Oh, they have a 1 in 15 chance to do that. 2 more hours of exploration it is. There are a total of 8 Chaos Dungeon skills you can find. If they're the only interest you have for exploring Chaos Dungeon, just remember that you cannot obtain them until depth 7, and try to rush for depth 10 for easier find. Now let's talk about how good each and every skill individually. First one, we got Royalty. It's double Omni Blast plus all 4 raisins and an extra 100% crit in one singular button. If you're a lazy bum that doesn't wanna spend 1 or 2 minutes spamming all the buff items, this one's perfect for you. So in reality, aside from the 100% crit, this skill is useless. You're just wasting a turn for no reason when you can just use the buff items instead. Heck, you don't even need all the stat buffs. The only ones you need are max HP, which this skill doesn't give, attack, magic, and sometimes luck. Realistically, the only real value you get from this skill is the 100% crit for 2 turns, which is pretty valuable, so you don't need to spend an extra ring slot for crit. I suppose Royalty is useful in SS Reignited and against Nurse Skull and Pure White Prison, where items are disabled. The next one is Quick Dance. It's literally just acrobatics. Dodge that lasts 1 turn longer, that affects the entire party members. About time we get an upgrade for Dodge without having to waste a ring slot at that. It has a cooldown of 3 for some reason, which by the time you need to reset it, it would be off cooldown already. Having access to a better dodge is very nice and all. The problem is just, Tinkerbell's powder exists. That item just gives you acrobatics without advancing the turn. And if you're planning to waste hours and hours on end in Chaos Dungeon anyway, chances are you will get a lot of it. If you care to spend the time looting the item chest, that is. If you're planning to use Wall of Flash, which by the way respawn on every phases of Gregignol, or use Dream Spirits against the final boss, I can see how Quick Dance can be useful. Otherwise, just use Tinkerbell's powder. Then we have Catherine's Wheel, the strongest magic in the game. It's straight up power creep heavy soul discharge by 25% damage wise. Also applies bleeding, which is just a 3% DOT for free. As if that wasn't enough, it also lifesteals because why not? What? You think that's the end of it? It's also certain hit to make sure it doesn't miss and ignore magic resistance. Against a single enemy, this skill hits 8 times, dealing 5 times your magic each. With around 80 to 90k magic, you can pretty much one-shot almost everything with crits. It has the physical element though, which Snowface and Phase 7 Gregignol take less damage from. Next is Holy Banner, another buff skill. 30% HP regen and double defense and magic defense. Doubling your defense and magic defense sucks ass. Having high defense and magic defense won't help you that much. Your enemy's attack and magic is scale far faster, and the damage formula was never made fair to begin with. You better off increasing your guard or physical/magical resistance instead if you want to tank. The 30% SP regen, however, is also useless, aside from very niche scenarios. By niche, I mean like 3 fights in the entire game: Nurse Skull, Florence, and Pure White Prison. Then there's Black Wave, a power creep for your beloved Timberwalk site. It does 15% percentage space damage to all enemies and inflicts Frail, which is a debuff that makes you take 150% damage from physical and magical attacks. Not certain hits though. It is unfortunately a magical attack, meaning it doesn't work against enemies with magic reflect. And oh, don't forget to bring one of Relief plus 5 because with the cooldown that long, your grandma would have woken up for the promised day before you can use it again. One black skill isn't enough. They made another one called Black Slash. It's a certain hit single target skill that does 6 times your attack 4 times, dealing 24 times your attack in total. Very, mid, and average for your average weapon skills. The appeal of this skill is not the damage per se, heck it cannot even crit. What makes it one of the best damaging skills in the game is the fact that it doesn't have a cooldown, meaning you can just spam it. It's not a weapon skill, so when that 50% bonus action from Mabel's Divine Artifact or Soulless hits after the weapon swap to Swords of the Giant, you actually have something to do with it. Its certain hit, which bypasses evasion and physical damage resistance, and its element is none, ensuring you will always deal consistent 100% damage regardless of whom you're fighting against. When in doubt, just press Black Slash. If you're pissed and goes for Giga Jet magic build instead of the average virgin attack build, you will love the next skill, Awakening. Doubles magic, plus 100% crit, and plus 1 bonus action. All for the low cost of all your attack. The perfect buff for every magician. It only lasts for 5 turns, so if you get bored and want to go back to your old attack build, you can. The last skill is Chaos Blast. Oh boy, where do I even begin with this one? It's a magical AoE attack that does 25% of your enemy's current HP as damage, similar to Hammer. But unlike Hammer, Chaos Blast can crit. That's 75% of your enemy's health pool disappear into nothingness. Extremely overpowered. Wait, I'm not done yet. Its element is fire, and there's this debuff in the game called Oil that you can apply by throwing Oil Urn or by equipping Banker's Ring. What does it do? Well, I don't know, like make fire damage deal 50% more damage? Yeah, a Chaos Blast crit against oil enemy will deal 112.5% damage, which will in fact one-shot the enemy regardless of their HP. You don't even need magic stat to achieve this. Just equip your Kishigatana, then sit back and relax, watching the world burn. Bonus point if your name is Waxwork or the Theater of Darkness Krekinyo, because they are naturally weak to fire, so you don't even need the oil. Oh, in case a boss randomly has magic resistance, just apply Frail with Black Breath or Sin Burst for the same effect. They can stack, by the way. What if they're immune to crit? Just wait for the right moment, and yeah, I'm starting to think this skill might be overpowered. The Old King is a Chaos Dungeon boss that only spawns in Depth 9. You cannot escape him. Skipping the floor while possible only delays the inevitable. Going into Depth 10 is not possible while the Old King remains undefeated. So if you want a higher chance to get the juicy Chaos Dungeon skills, you need to beat this old man. He has 2 faces and is very gimmicky. If you're expecting just another normal boss fight you can steamroll, prepare some tissues to cry to. First of all, prepare some certain hit skills, otherwise he only takes half the damage. And don't use elemental magic like Heavy Soul Discharge, they will do poor damage. Get some dark resistance if you can, most of his attacks are dark. The most important part of the fight is understanding how his Death Seed attack works. If you're unaware, then you will randomly just die. When the explosion happens, it's kinda random, so you can't just Requiem your way out of it. I mean you can, you just have to spam it, just in case it might blow up right after your Requiem ends. If you ever try to think about tanking it, yeah, not gonna happen. A simple way to avoid this is to just press the dodge button on turn 1. The Old King's attack pattern is determined by turn numbers, not random at all. On turn 1, he always uses Restrain Arms, which inflicts the Restrain debuff. If you have the debuff at the end of any turn, then he will plant the Death Seed. With the dodge buff active, you will be immune to Restraint. You need to also use those at turn 5 because he will inflict gravity debuff which pretty much nullifies your speed, followed by a chant attack dealing way too much damage. You can break him, but if you have no speed, then his chant attack will go through. His moveset will reset every 7 turns, just keep that in mind. Below 50% HP, the Old King will get the Rage buff, boosting his stats to 150%. You can just dispel it too. And at 1% HP, he refuses to die and second phase begins. Shadow Reflections will spawn every turn up to 6. All they do is chant the same chant attack the Old King does. They are impervious to damage. Not true actually, certain hit attacks can damage them, don't bother though, they're immortal anyway. Break them instead, that will also kill them. If you somehow still don't have access to any bonus action, you have to use a gun instead of shield because on the first turn, you have to deal with 2 Shadow Reflections. While all of this is happening, the real Old King will regenerate 5% HP every turn, so don't forget to hit him along the way if possible. After all the reflections die, the Old King's immortality will fade and you can finally finish him. Beating the Old King doesn't reward you with anything, but you now have access to depth 10 or higher. Once you have reached depth 1 on Chaos Dungeon, the door located on the left inside Chaos Dungeon will open. It leads you to a boss rush area called Reignited. During the boss rush, your items are disabled during battle, so if you've been abusing the shit out of them thus far, you may need to rethink your approach to your strategy. As compensation, you are given a skill called Heal that, surprise surprise, heals you 50% HP and MP without advancing your turn. The cooldown is 2, which makes it usable every single turn, so make sure to use it even if your HP drops by 1%. There are a total of 5 batches of boss rush based on their depth and difficulty. You start off at depth 0 and every time you win, the game will roll a die to determine which depth you should be on next. The range really isn't that big, so just a slight stats difference. The bosses might be slightly easier or harder, depending on this, but you can barely notice it, so don't worry about it. You will also be rewarded with 6 chests containing colored souls. If you're in mid to late game, it's best to ignore them, like seriously. If you have beaten the game at least once, these boss rushes shouldn't be too hard. Most of the bosses has physical and magical resistance, so it's always a good idea to have certain hit skills. I recommend getting the heroic 4+ sword first before diving in. There's a boss in the last boss rush that has 100% parry and magical flank, so it's actually mandatory to bring a certain hit skill. If you're confused which skills are certain hit, just look for the word unavoidable. You also need to pay attention to your tanking ability. The final boss of boss rush 5 will do a very strong attack right before he dies. And no, you cannot kill him before he does the attack, so be prepared as soon as he reaches 1% HP. Once you have beaten all the bosses, you now have the luxury to fight our Lord and Savior, Mabel herself. She's just a DPS check really, not a real boss. As long as you can defeat her in less than 8 turns, you should be fine. She has 11 million HP with 5% HP regen, and percentage-based damage won't work against her. So just bring out your strongest moves and you will be rewarded with a victory. Once defeated, Mabel will offer you 2 rewards. 50 souls of the outer one, which equates to 15 million souls, or instead, mankind's treasure filled with hopes and dreams. But the real reward is the third option. I'm never washing my face ever again. Beating Reignited bosses also gives you a lot of souls. It is in fact the best source for farming souls if you're strong enough to beat it every time. You also get the Mystery of the Night Sky, a very powerful headgear that will help you go through DLC 3. Now that we have talked about everything you need to know about Chaos Dungeon, let's refer back to the original question. Is Chaos Dungeon worth your time? Yes, but actually not really. It is pretty much recommended to do Chaos Dungeon before going into DLC 3. If you have beaten the game only once and without a guide at that, you will most likely miss out on a lot of equipments and skills, and Chaos Dungeon exists to fix that problem for you. It's also a good way to stock up on Tinkerbell's powder and Lure's fountain pen, that otherwise requires new game plus every time you need more of them. The Chaos Dungeon skills are absolutely overpowered, even if you don't need them to beat the game. Exploring Chaos Dungeon also gives you a good amount of souls, or just do as Reignited if you're only in it for the souls. Overall, Chaos Dungeon helps you prepare for DLC 3. It's definitely worth it to go through it at least once. But at the same time, if you don't want to explore Chaos Dungeon and just want to jump straight to DLC 3, that's also fine. You won't miss out on a lot. Despite the floor tips telling you to defeat the Old King, you don't need to do that at all. The requirement on opening the big door doesn't entail entering the Chaos Dungeon itself, but rather for you to meet Mabel for the first time inside Chaos Dungeon. So you technically have to enter Chaos. Yes, you don't actually need to enter the dungeon. Just attempt to do it to spawn Mabel and you're good to go. That's all I have to say regarding this topic. If I miss out on any detail or said any misinformation, feel free to point it out in the comment. Thank you so much for your time and see you in the next one.